may be broadcast and or rebroadcast on WestfordCAT. Also like to place a reminder, I think Bob brought it up last week, all the material that we have to go through and review and prepare for the meeting is available on the website in the meeting packet section, generally around noontime the Friday before the meeting. So if you're interested, you can see what we see, and a lot of your questions may be answered there. I will go to open forum. Janowitz?
Just one thing, Mr. Chair. We're going to have our second public workshop on February 23rd. It's a Monday from 6 to 8 at the Stony Brook School for our Route 40 corridor study. So this will be more of an open house style, so people can come and go. You don't have to stay the whole time. But that's February 23rd, which is Monday from 6 to 8 at Stony Brook School.
Great. Anybody from the board, anything for them?
I think just following up on what Joe said, we've had one forum already for Route 40 last week, and 9 days ago, we had the first forum as well for the Route 110 pedestrian plan. So really urge residents to participate. It's a small time investment, but it could have big rewards for the town in the future. So please come out and let your voice be heard. If you can't come to the meeting, there are surveys online as well where you can submit your opinion and questions. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody from the audience for open forum? All right, we're going to jump to general business before we get to the public hearings, just to get these out of the way. So general business item A, PB 2520, 7 Carl Johnson, review of the draft decision. Joe, did engineering have any major changes or comments?
No, Mr. Chair. Again, they felt like there would be ample opportunity to work with the applicant to resolve any outstanding issues prior to any construction activities on site. So they didn't have any concerns that none of their outstanding comments couldn't be resolved.
All right, board have any questions, discussion on the decision as written?
I am fine with it, but I just want to make sure that the applicant agrees to what was written in there based upon the discussion last time, and that has to do with the automation of the lights. While it's permitted for the lights to go on at 5:30, I think the way it's written is they have to be manually switched on. They get automatically switched off at no later than 8, unless they're overridden manually, but I think the way it's written is they get turned on when the first employee comes into the site after 5:30 in the morning. So I just want to make sure you have read that detail in the decision.
Yeah, I read it, but not exactly as you just stated. I just think there's going to be a conflict of if we shut them off manually, they have to be turned on manually in the morning. If they are overridden, if
you read the way it is written, the yard lights shall be turned on when the first employee arrives for the day.
Or at 5:30?
Or at 5:30, whichever it is.
Oh, whichever is later.
Yeah.
So if the employee arrives at 6, the lights will not go on automatically at 5:30. That's the way it's written.
Correct. They were going at 6.
And that's what we would like. I just want to make sure that
okay,
this gets implemented that way.
yeah, that's fine. We're going to end up shutting them off at night when we leave,
Yeah.
and turning them on in the morning when we come in. I mean, that's
Electricity costs money, I'm sure not burning lights when you don't
Yeah.
need to. So.
Okay.
Anybody else, any discussion on the decision? Nope. All right, so do we need a motion to approve the decision as written, or just sign it? I think we just sign it, don't we?
What?
We need a motion to approve the decision?
Well, you could just approve based on the draft decision.
Right. All right. So we don't need a motion.
Yeah, you should make a motion.
All right.
Sorry, if I wasn't clear. Motion away, someone. Anybody.
All right, so can I get a motion to approve the decision as written, 2520, 7 Carl Thompson Road?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I do appreciate it.
Next, we have PB 2603, 78 Brookside Road, Brookside Trading Post. Request for administrative review to approve a change from business professional office to retail sales in the general public, to the general public. Good evening.
Hello?
You guys want to just introduce yourselves and let us know what's going on?
Yeah, I'm William McAllister. This is my business partner, Steve Harrow. We're trying to open up 78 Brookside Room for a small antiques collectibles shop, oddities shop, right across from where the Willows used to be. I'm sure you all know of it. Yeah, we're on the right half of that building.
All right. I think we looked at the application. Joe, have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chair, there are very minor comments from Health Department and Fire Department. It seems like the applicant's already been in contact with both of them to resolve those comments, so there's no concerns there.
If I could add, the fire department, they requested that 2 signs, exit signs be put up. We put both of them up. They've requested that we have a fire extinguisher. We've got the fire extinguisher. The other department requested that the septic system be worked on. Apparently hadn't been worked on. We have gone to our landlord, who is now working with the town. They've already got a proposal in to get the septic system fixed. They're waiting until March because there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. I don't know if you guys have been out there lately, but that's already in progress, and we've been told that, at least from their point of view, we're fine to open as long as that's going to be fixed in March, which they're already putting in the plans to get this all done.
Okay. Bob, any questions, thoughts? Joni?
No.
Dylan?
Nope.
Darren?
Nope, straightforward.
Looks very good.
Get a motion to approve PB 2603 administrative review to change use from business to retail sales to the general public, 78 Brookside Road.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, just so we were to have PB 2534, 400 Littleton Road, the applicant requests to continue this hearing without discussion to February 19th. Can I get a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 PB 2536, 37 Powers Road. Applicant has requested to continue this hearing without discussion to March 2nd, 2026. In this room at 7 o'clock. Should I-
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
PB 2602, 219 Littleton Road. Public hearing, site plan review under McMod, stormwater management. Can I get a motion to waive the public notice?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Get a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good evening, Attorney Robbins.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from Farrell Robbins here on behalf of Redgate and 219 Littleton Owners LLC. As Mr. Chair has stated, we're here tonight for site plan review pursuant to your MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District bylaw. I'll call it McMod for the rest of the time. For the property off of 219 Littleton Road, previously operated by the Westford Regency. Tonight, what we'd like to do is give the board an overview, hear some preliminary comments and questions, and then hopefully hire some third-party consultants to review the material. There are some waivers listed at the end of the slides, which I will briefly go through, but I would anticipate we wouldn't take a deep dive into those this evening until we get third-party review back. With me tonight is the project team, Lizbeth, from Redgate, sorry I lost you there for a second, Amy Corte, Bridget Doherty, and David Boyce from Arrow Street, they're the project architects. Katie Cruz from Hancock Associates, she's a civil engineer. Brian Biesel from Howard Stein Hudson, he's the traffic engineer. Sean Sanger from Copley Wolf, he's the landscape architect. And Ray Willis from Fuss and O'Neill, he's a senior project engineer and can answer all of your questions about wastewater. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, wait a minute, the first slide. The pretty plan, Joe.
Sorry.
There we are, thank you. So everybody knows the project site, so I won't waste a lot of time on what the property is, but I will tell you I've grown up in Westford and been in this building at least 10,000 times, I think, but I was surprised when I saw the existing condition plan, actually how big the Westford Regency is. I didn't know that it had 193 hotel rooms. I did know that it had Clark's and all of the conference rooms and all of the other rooms that people rented out for weddings and showers and all of that, but I didn't know that the hotel itself was so large. So in accordance with the McMod bylaws, what our development is going to do is actually remove the aging hotel structure and develop 2 new buildings. Each of the buildings will contain 150 units apiece. The redevelopment of the site will also be able to keep the historic structure that's located along the front of the project site for historic preservation. I mean, this was seen as very important with our discussions, preliminary discussions with this board and other town boards and departments, so we really kept this in as a critical component to our overall design. As to the location of the site, I think it's a perfect site for McMod development, especially for pedestrian amenities. It's already linked to an existing sidewalk system that goes directly to Cornerstone Square. Many crosswalks, you can actually walk to Whole Foods, you can walk down there and get a burger, go to Karma, and actually walk back on a sidewalk, go to a crosswalk, and then go into the site. We are also going to have site pedestrian amenities on our site, which I'll let one of the other consultants go through in a moment. As opposed to the other project that this board has already reviewed, this project is not requesting any special permits. So there's no special permits required whatsoever under the McMod bylaw. All the waivers have been identified in the application, and we'll quickly go through them this evening, but I know Dodson and Flinker will look at it again if they're hired at the end of this meeting. There are 8 total McMod waivers. They're generally design waivers, which I think this board is very familiar with. The final waiver is the subdivision waiver, which I think there's probably the same amount of waivers because just like the other project that this board previously approved, this is not a subdivision. So generally we're asking for waivers from all of the subdivision rules and regulations. We will go through that with Paul and Jeremy, the town engineers, and also with the third-party consultant, just to make sure that we're in technical compliance with anything that they would like us to be as part of the subdivision rules and regulations. I think I've probably said enough, and I have a whole team behind me that'd like to speak with you this evening, so I'll turn over to Amy from Arrow Street to go through a couple of the slides.
Thanks. So we'll start with this one. We really wanted to situate this within your current planning efforts. The linked and livable neighborhoods, of which they had a charrette last Saturday. Sean, the landscape architect, and myself attended and really appreciated you all giving us that opportunity to listen, hear the community. It was very useful. I think like the goal of the linked and livable neighborhoods, which is really to connect all the various McMod developments together and to create a walkable, interconnected series of residential neighborhoods that would ultimately connect to your community shopping areas, to places like Kimball Farm, which are right down the street. There was a whole discussion around whether people would walk to the farm on the family's side of it, and the answer was pretty much a resounding yes from some of your younger and newer residents in the town. We also understand from the McMod zoning that really the goal of that is to create sustainable multifamily housing that again strengthens the pedestrian connections and looks at what are those previously disturbed sites and those previously commercially zoned areas that could be redeveloped into neighborhoods. And then we also wanted to acknowledge, if you could zoom down a little bit, the widening and the improvements along Littleton Road, because as we get into the blocks and streets, what we started to really realize here is that the main street that this site should be focusing on is Littleton Road, at least in our opinion. It has that potential to connect the residents of this community and this neighborhood, along with the larger Westford community, to the shopping centers of Cornerstone Mall, of Whole Foods, of Starbucks, to Tech Park East, and then the opposite way to Kimball Farms and to Neshoba Valley. And so is there a way that we could really look at at Littleton Road as our main street and think about how we can improve the pedestrian condition along that street? The lower left-hand corner was pulled from an early planning rendering from Mass DOT. The sidewalk on the right is actually across the street from our site with the bikeable bike path, the shared use path, and the grassy median on the left is what is proposed for our site. And you'll see in our plans that we submitted along with this presentation, we're looking at how we improve that further. Our thought is we should really pull the pedestrians off of Littleton Road, give them a little bit of a tree buffer, install a series of trees, and think about that as our boulevard for the project to make pedestrians, again, feel safer, to feel like they're being separated from that traffic. If you go to the next one. And so that's just an overall snapshot of putting our project in context with Cornerstone Square, with the shopping centers on the corner. We started to map in the trails that we know of, and then really, the connection to Kimball Farms is a 5-minute bus ride. It's probably a 30-minute walk if you made Littleton Road feel walkable or bikeable, that you could actually go down the street and get an ice cream, if you're a family. Maybe go to the next one. And then just I think we showed some of these slides. These were our early renderings from October, still in play. We're looking at how do we create a wide diversity of housing types and a different type of housing, so this doesn't feel like the typical apartment block with the flat roof, but really look at how we're inspired by the Greek Revival architecture of the historic house with the sloped roof and the gable ends. And so we'll come back in later planning board meetings and show more perspectives of the site. We wanted to focus this first presentation on the plan, the site plan, and illustrate some of the waivers we're asking. But overall, we're setting up the massing and the architecture of the buildings, each one of the gabled ends, very typical to Greek Revival architecture, which was always oriented perpendicular to the street. And so we're setting up the same language in our buildings so that the gabled end basically creates and signifies main entrance into the building. And so those moments become the main pedestrian entrances in for both of the buildings on the site. We also think there's a way to get very different types of housing in here. When we talked to Jeff and Joe about some of the survey information that you were getting from the residents, there was a real desire for people to downsize, to think about how we could create this more like townhouse-like unit or a walk-up unit. And so this is a section through kind of that front portion of our buildings. And so what we're trying to create here are really 3 different unit types, or there's many more than that. But on the ground, you really get this walk-up type unit where it's like you're living in more of a smaller townhouse row setting where you can park your car right in front of your unit. You have a patio and a second entrance that you can enter from the outside. It creates a little bit of a nook, a place to activate the streetscape and the pedestrian area, and then you can walk right into your unit. On the middle levels, and one of the reasons we like to do buildings that aren't so blocky shape is with the angles for these inside corners and the outside corners of the units. They really, they live more like a home and less like a rectangular box that's an apartment building. And so we actually got this comment from one of the people we were reviewing the building with last week and we kind of pulled out one of our 3-bedroom units, which is up in the upper right corner. You know, if you start to break away from the typical kind of shotgun box that a lot of these apartments are like, you start to create these corridor moments, additional places for people to, you know, put their home goods, art on the walls, and make it feel more like a single family home within the typical apartment typology. And then we also have the kind of another different type of housing condition on the top floors underneath the sloped roofs, which we're calling the loft units. And so we have 1-bedroom loft units, we have 2-bedroom loft units, and this creates an opportunity again for these places and the residents to feel more like a home. You create these moments where you can get these perches out. We've got some daylight and windows up there, as well as a balcony within the living area. And so it's just, again, more diversity for Westford's housing stock and more opportunities for people to live in different ways and support different lifestyles. Just to highlight what we're doing from the sustainability side, we have 2 slides on this. One is for the building. We're very much looking at all-electric buildings, more efficient systems. Some of the waivers that we're asking for in terms of flattening the facades on the back sides of the buildings are directly related to having a more efficient envelope to support the higher energy code, triple glazed windows, obviously continuous insulation, which we all need very much right now. And then in all of our developments, we put in the low flow fixtures, and then looking at the reuse of the existing historic house and barn, which is obviously a huge plus from the sustainability side. If you go to the next one. And then from the site, what we're looking at for this project is really thinking about how we integrate health and wellness into all factors. So not only from the interior materials and the health of the indoor environment within the building, but also how it connects to the site. And so a lot of our planning for the site and the way we've situated the buildings on the site is to weave the buildings around nature. Sean is going to talk more about the landscape path that he's then woven through and between the buildings and the wetlands on the site to create this additional walking path for residents. We've done a series of I would say alternative plans as we were developing this site plan because we did want to look at what does it mean to create an as-of-right project. In a lot of those cases, it resulted in very large parking lots that are much larger than what you'll see on our current plan. it is a better idea to break up the parking in those lanes of asphalt, which reduces the heat island effect and really helps the stormwater quality. And then if you zoom down a little bit more, the old growth trees in that reference was we've gone out and we've mapped the existing trees on site. There's a series of like really spectacular trees on the upper left of the site plan, and it's actually shown, one of the photos is in the upper right of this slide. But there's basically a row of trees that have obviously been there for a while. We've planned our site around there to incorporate and preserve those trees within the parking groves. And there's also a pretty significant tree that we're saving near the historic house. And so we did a series of adjustments on the site plans for that. And then there's actually this great opportunity to reuse some of the cobbles, the fire lane posts, the granite slabs, maybe they become benches, and the stone walls that are currently on the site. And so we're starting to look at those too. Just to remind everybody of where we are, as Melissa mentioned, we were all surprised as we outlined the Regency Conference Center. The building currently is 455 feet long. I will say our building is shorter than that, even the longer building A. The trees that I just mentioned are noted at the top of this plan, the mature groves of trees. That's what we're basically weaving our parking fields around. And then there's another one kind of to the upper right of the historic house, that larger specimen, which right now is pretty encroached by the existing pavement. We're looking at giving it more space and more room there too. And so just to remind everybody of the previous plan and really what we heard from when we were in front of you in October, some of the feedback. The first one was really how the building entrances could be more prominent to the main entrance coming off of Littleton Road. And so our entrance and our main entrance for Building A was where the number 1 was marked on the site plan. We have since moved that, so it is on axis with the main entry drive and the road coming off of that. And we're working through how that works three-dimensionally, and we can come back to the planning board and show you that architecture. The length of the Building A, we got, a question around, is it possible to reduce that length or to split it into 2 buildings? We have adjusted the geometry and we reduced that length of the building. The question around 2 means of access. In the October site plan, we were showing the existing entry drive, basically existing to remain. And then number 3 in the lower right corner, we had a secondary point of access for the fire department. We've since clarified that through discussions with your department. We looked at the unit mix. We've got a whole series of 3 bedrooms because we heard that 3-bedroom units for families were important to Westford. The traffic light, Brian is here from Howard Stein Hudson to address the traffic and the analysis that he had. And then we heard that while we were showing the exact number of parking spaces that were required by MCMOD, it was really a question of could we green bank some of those spaces, and we've got a diagram to show you where we're proposing that. So some of the major changes that we made from the October meeting, we really wanted to get some more space between the historic house and the curbside and the streets that were going around that. So we increased basically the landscape and that buffer between the, call it the front side of the historic house, but the front side that's facing Building A and Building B, as well as creating a little bit more space around the tree that we're preserving. We also reduced, in order to do that, we reduced the parking lot sizes, which are labeled by the number 2, and so creating a smaller parking field right when you enter, and we pushed a little bit more of that to the back of the building. Landscape, Copley Wolf and Sean will talk more about this in the later presentation, really looked at how we're activating those outdoor amenities. We've done the calculations for that, as well as really refining a lot of our geometries and the setbacks for the buildings. And then we also reduced the length of Building A by 50 feet, and what more importantly, we made it into more of a U-shaped building right upon entrance. So as you're walking around that building, the building perceives to be shorter, and so actually the front of that building is shorter than the current Regency Hotel. We also looked at redistributing some of the garages, which are number 5, so they were closer to the building. And then most importantly, we worked with the fire department. We had a series of conversations with them about what they wanted for their access off of Littleton Road. They described very much that they currently slip in off of Littleton Road. And so what we're planning for, and Katie can talk more when we have the slide with the fire department turnaround radiuses, the goal would be basically they would enter the site right where it says bus stop. There's a series of gates that would automatically open as the fire truck approached it. They would slip into the site, and then we have a slide later in the presentation deck that shows the path of the fire truck turning radius around that. The fire department also expressed their desire to not do the double median at the main entrance, which is labeled number 6, and to take that away because it was easier for them to pull their truck in. We have left that road and the geometry and modified it a bit so that, again, it eases that turn in for them. And then civil and stormwater has progressed, and we've submitted to Concom as of January 21st. So. Just a summary of, we are complying with a lot of the major zoning and MCMOD zoning dimensions that are written in the bylaw. All of the front, side, and rear yard setbacks we comply with. We understand there's a waiver for the garages, so obviously those are closer to the rear yard than Building A. That 90 feet is taken basically from Building A. For the MCMOD zoning, we are complying with the outdoor amenity square footage. We have a diagram that shows where that occurs. Open space, we are, with all the wetlands on site, we're obviously over 200% on that portion, and then the rest of them are basically complying with the requirements in MCMOD. And then we just wanted to get into a little bit more illustration of the waivers we're asking for. We understand there's the blocks and streets requirement. The diagram in the upper left is what is currently in the zoning bylaws, and really what it illustrated, and through our discussions with Dodson and Flinker, it illustrated a much smaller housing typology with a series of connections through the block. And so what we wanted to do is test out, what does a 150 unit block look like? It is possible to fit it in there. You do get slightly smaller units, and it results in basically a donut building if you take the maximum 1,200 foot perimeter around there. The diagram in the lower left is what Dodson and Flinker showed at the Saturday charrette, which was actually useful to kind of see and understand too. That represents 90 units max that you could fit on the block with the associated parking. One thing that we've been looking at is really that front setback and that distance away, really your front yard for that unit, because while the original zoning has a really generous front yard setback of 20 feet, which is on the far side of the diagram, what it doesn't leave is a lot of setback with the head-in parking, basically reducing that to what looks like 3 to 5 feet on that diagram. And so what we're proposing is, in our site plan, is to almost split the difference, to create a variety of setbacks. We range from about 9 feet to 18 feet on our site plan, so you create a nicer front yard for the units that basically front the parking. And then in testing this on the site plan, it results in very large parking fields, and we felt like, both from the resident perspective of wanting to basically park as close to your unit as possible and not be kind of out in the wilderness by 495, to really minimize that size of the parking field and weave it around the site. So again, it helps with the stormwater treatment. It helps with the urban heat island in terms of not having large swaths of asphalt. And actually, the less streets that you do on the interior of the block also helps us increase the pervious surfaces within the site. And so we're able to get more green by doing less streets through our site. If you go to the next one. And so, obviously the first waiver we're asking for is the block waiver. Surprisingly, we actually almost comply with Building B for the blocks, in terms of the overall perimeter being very close to the 1,200 feet that is required. And we do believe that the spirit of the site plan does, meet a lot of, if not all of the McMod zoning design intent for that. We highlighted in this plan, the white is all of those amenity spaces and the areas that you can basically cut through the buildings. We have another slide that shows where the main entrances are, but basically people can access these buildings from basically all four sides, with the exception of Building B. When you're on the wetlands, we have carved a path through there. The mature tree groves, which is in number 2, we've designed the parking to basically go around those 2 main rows, or really the 3 main rows of trees. And then, really looking at how we prioritize pedestrians over the vehicular traffic and the streets on the site. We think it's a good thing to actually have these rural trails meandering through the sites, and to have the buildings, instead of being more rectangular, more urban-based in that geometric form, to begin to angle them, which again breaks down the perceived length of these buildings too. Just to mark what we're considering our streets, obviously Littleton Road is what we think is the primary street. There is nowhere for streets to connect to within this site. 495 is planned north at the backside. Cornerstone Mall has about a 12-foot grade change and a series of wetlands and vernal pools on that side, as well as entering into the backside and the kind of loading area of that mall. And then we've got wetlands all to the left. And so what we've done is set up a street condition going up through the center of the site with the entry drive that will terminate in the main entrance to the building. Red are the primary entrances to the building, so where you would enter for your lobby, your leasing, in terms of Building A, as well as the outdoor amenities. Blue are the secondary entrances. We have loading that is integrated into both buildings, so move-ins will happen basically above the letter A for Building A. We've got a pull-off area for a moving truck to back in. Trash will also be serviced within the building. We have trash chutes in both of these buildings. That's very typical for what Redgate does. So the trash dumps into a chute. We have a large trash room in the bottom of each building on trash day. Correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but the trash basically gets rolled out immediately right in front of that building and is picked up the next morning. And recycling by the trash and recycling trucks. So everything is contained within the building, which helps with a lot of operational items. If you go to the next one. Just to highlight the other 2 waivers, I think there's another one down slightly below. Actually, we can start with this top one. So there's something in the McMod zoning requirements that basically doesn't allow your upper story windows to be taller than your other windows. Our dormer windows are slightly taller just because of where we've started the slope and the pitch. I think it's less than 1 foot taller, so they're not, huge. It's not a huge difference, but we did want to just make sure we asked for a waiver for that. And if you scroll down, there's a couple places where we exceed the length of the building for the dimensional standards of basically it sets up, you can only go X number of feet before you have a jog in. Most of our building length, we have that set back in by about 3 feet for all of the living room spaces, which then creates an opportunity for a patio or a balcony. There are some cases on the ends of these units where, due to that straight run, we exceed that dimension. So here it's 39 feet. And if you go to the next one, and it also occurs on the rear of our building, so on the rear of Building A and on the rear of Building B, which is really not visible by the public or by the person entering the site. If you scroll down a little bit, sorry, Joe. That facade is simplified to, in this case, it was 156 feet. The example is taken from Building A. Obviously, the historic house also does not conform with this McMod requirement. Almost every plane of that historic house exceeds the length that you're allowed. So that's, as an existing non-conforming condition, we're asking for as well. We also have some small areas where we exceed the square footage of the blank wall area. Again, these are at typically the ends of the buildings. We're turning the corner, and we're really doing this primarily both because of energy efficiency and how the interior of the units happen to lay out. You either have a bed up against that wall or it's your TV wall, and so we need some amount of solid wall in order to correctly basically lay out the living rooms and the bedrooms or the closets or the bathrooms for these units. So that's both where it happens to be, but we've also feel like we've composed them with the regular order of windows to still meet your McMata tent. We'll be back in some later planning board meetings with what our vision is for the historic house, including the program. I think this is a really special building for Westford, and one that we're really going to look at celebrating as we move through this process. It's such a prime location on Littleton Road, built in 1872. The house itself, which is the upper, the upper historic photo, has that great Greek revival kind of pitch of the roof. We're looking at how to, if you scroll down just a little bit, right now we're planning to redo the exterior siding. We would love to remove the bay window that is not historically accurate. That's currently a bedroom window from the inside unit. And it's just, one, it interrupts the volume of the barn, and you've got this really great opportunity to expose, the timbers in the barn are already exposed, and we can make that one larger space and take out the bedroom that was built much later from Vinebrook Farms. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Evening, everyone. Excuse me. Evening, everyone. Brian Mizell from Howardstown Hudson. I'll try to be brief. I know traffic's everyone's favorite conversation. But as was discussed, there's a lot of networks of sidewalks within the site, and connecting to Cornerstone Square specifically to maximize the pedestrian experience. There are dedicated areas on site, as Amy was just saying, for drop-off, and then also the parcels and deliveries and loading. We can get into more details on any of this, but I think Amy hit all of it. And then if you go to just stay here, I'll just show you. So obviously Boston Road is the big intersection right along Littleton Road. And we do have the majority of our traffic estimated to go through there, whether they're going to and from 495 or coming up here to the main part of Westford. There is the 37 Powers Road development that had plans and proposed to do signal timing changes. And within those signal timing changes, essentially it's going to make the intersection operate so much better than it currently does, that it can also accommodate the additional traffic from our site. So when we did trip generation for this site, the meeting space was still in use, and when we did counts, we have volume in and out of our driveway, right? It wasn't a blank slate. So we expect a total of about 2 cars every minute during the peak hour. And the peak hour is a 1-hour window between 7 and 9 a.m. and then a 1-hour window between 4 and 6 p.m. And about half of that is already occurring on site, was occurring on site until recently when there were events at the meeting space. So we're going to add about a car every minute to the car every minute that was already there. And then if you go down to the next slide, the biggest part of this is the consolidation from 2 driveways down to 1, the second driveway being just emergency access. That's a much better condition, right? The less interactions we have along Littleton Road, the safer it is for people coming in and out and for people driving along Littleton Road. So this graphic here, I think everyone's probably aware, is that MassDOT and the town of Westford has been looking at redesigning Littleton Road. So the top graphic is MassDOT, and graphic for that shows what they were planning on doing, and then the bottom is our site plan laid on top of that. So the intent would be that we can match into what they were planning on doing. They're putting the cycle track on the south side, and as Amy had discussed, we are having a row of trees on the north side to separate our pedestrians on the sidewalk from the vehicles traveling on Littleton Road. And then if you go down, obviously the timing of roadway projects in the state and this climate that we're in is a little unknown. So if we are first, we do have the ability to meet into the existing Littleton Road as well, which is what you see on top. And then again, this is just a zoomed in version on the bottom of what was on the previous page of our site with the MassDOT / Town of Westford redesign of Littleton Road. And then as for, so we are not proposing a crosswalk at our site driveway. I personally, and most traffic engineers would say that a mid-block crosswalk, which is what this would be, right, even though it's our site driveway, it's not very defined as much as an intersection. I would love to think everyone's doing 35 miles an hour on Littleton Road, but that is not realistic. So, limiting the crossings, pedestrian crossings, I think in this place, not having a crosswalk, encouraging people to cross here would be the safer option, right? We do have the east-west connections along Littleton Road to get to crosswalks at signalized intersections, which is a much safer place to cross. And then the other discussion that has come up is a signal. So installing signals is actually the opposite of the way a lot of people look at it. You actually there's different warrants to meet, and there's 3 different volume warrants. There's a peak hour warrant, a 4-hour warrant, and an 8-hour warrant. And essentially you need to have a certain amount of traffic on your side streets to warrant putting in a signal. You can't just go in and put in a signal wherever you want. I mean, you could, but you shouldn't have, an engineer shouldn't be stamping the plan if you don't meet signal warrants. And we don't meet any of the warrants. It's 115 trips we're estimating total. Like I said, about 2 every minute, so that's not high enough to warrant putting in a signal here. So even if the developer wanted to pay for it, I would not stamp, I would not be stamping that plan, right, because we don't meet warrants. And MassDOT, since they control Littleton Road, they would never allow it if you don't meet warrants, right? Some local roads, you'll see signals that don't meet warrants, and that's because the town basically put them up, but MassDOT would not allow that to occur on one of their roads. So that is all I have. Happy to take questions later. You don't need me lecturing at you about your traffic conditions.
Thank you.
I'm Katie Cruz, I'm a civil engineer of Hancock Associates.
Can you speak up? I can't.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
It's
Is that
better.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about fire access throughout the site. The fire department has been great. They met with us a couple of times to review the site design. And of course, they implement the state fire code. I wanted to touch on a couple of the requirements of state fire code. One is that we need to provide at least 20 feet wide fire access roads throughout the site. The fire access roads don't necessarily need to go around the entire perimeter of the building, as long as there is access on foot for firefighters within 250 feet from either direction. In this case, both of the buildings, they are against 2 of the wetland areas. So those are the portions of the building that we have not proposed fire access roads. Fire access roads are in green on this plan. We did run turning movements for Westford's largest ladder truck, which is the largest fire truck in town. And these turning movements show that they can maneuver easily throughout the site and turn around where needed. There, as Amy and Brian mentioned, you can scroll down a little bit, there's the emergency access on the right side, closer to Cornerstone Square, and then the main access, which we switched from the boulevard style also to meet fire code, because the individual lanes don't have that 20-foot width that we need. It also allows us to shorten the crosswalk across the driveway instead of having a very long crosswalk, so it makes it much safer for pedestrians. We're proposing fire hydrants, which are the blue dots throughout the site, to provide adequate coverage. We also coordinated with the fire department to provide access to the roof areas, so there are openings within the slanted portions of the roof so that they can access the roofs where needed. I think that's it. Fire access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Sean Sanger with Copley Wolf Design Group. Is that okay? You guys hear me? All right, awesome. We're landscape architects and kind of follow up on a lot more of the previous consultants, so I'll kind of walk through. So just briefly, you've seen the site plan here. We'll go into this in greater detail with some enlargements, but hopefully what you're starting to see is there's the kind of in light colors, a perimeter path that loops around there. We're about 2/3 of a mile. We'll loop all the way around. That's been kind of from earlier drawing submissions pulled away from the parking lot edges, so we do have green space and some separation between those. They will link a lot of our kind of our public amenities. Kind of the big ones that are here in blue, kind of in the center, is a proposed pickleball court, right up there, close to 495, thank you. A little bit further down would be an off-leash dog park between the parking lot and that loop and the wetland. And then that kind of browner tone, the other large area is more of a nature play area. So kind of linking those together, and then likewise, The fire turnaround, kind of three-point turn on, thank you, somebody's reading my mind, will be more of a fitness area as well. We've oversized the amount of paving so that we can certainly accommodate the fire truck needs in those areas. Fire has seen that and seemed to be on board. Obviously, we'll have ongoing conversations with them, but likewise trying to create a bit of a fitness node there, as well as some of the larger green spaces that we do have along the loop. So really making the most of the loop there. And then I do want to say on this slide for just a second, I think the other really important thing here, and Amy has mentioned it, is our unique site that we do have here with the rather large wetland there on the left, the center wetland in the right behind Building A, and then the finger of the wetland behind Building B. So once again, I think we're really trying to get this wellness path in addition to being a fitness mode. Likewise, I think there's an opportunity for us to really kind of take advantage of the kind of the unique natural characteristics of the site as well, and kind of speak to the importance of wetlands, what they do, and certainly promote a lot of the story behind that. And then, since I don't really have another place to talk about this, I'm going to throw it in really quickly from a plant material standpoint, and we'll get into a lot more detail in future meetings. But we are proposing strictly natives on the plant palette, low water requirements, easily acclimated. We are limiting the amount of lawn in these areas, primarily right around the buildings themselves. And there will be obviously some ground cover shrubs, more ornamentals at certain key areas, but likewise a lot of the more natural areas from the path and on out will be more of a no-mow, if you will, or a low-mow, enough to be able to kind of keep the invasives under control, but at the same time not getting into a lot of heavy watering, a lot of heavy maintenance and mowing and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit more of a natural look, if you will, along the edges, and it'll make those wetlands feel obviously a little larger, and I think it'll be an easier transition between the what I'll call the more developed areas and those natural amenities that we do have on the property. And then this kind of highlights the trees that Amy was describing, our mature trees there. Those are all varying in the heights of, the caliper size is anywhere from 17 to 18 up to 23 inches. So the pictures you can see there on the left, these are all really big. We're guessing these were probably planted when the conference building went in back in the early 80s. So they're probably 40 plus years old. I mean, they're so perfectly in lines that we got to believe that they were planted, but they're doing really well. They look really healthy. We will have an arborist come out and take a look at those as well as a part of the process. But just once again, being really sensitive to those and creating an environment for those to continue to perform as we go forward. And then the other piece of this slide that's just a challenge that we're working with, the red box there in the center, just to the page north of the historic barn and house. That center line is our effluent field. And then the small dash line that's offset from there is a 10-foot offset. It's essentially a transition area that we can't plant any trees within that particular area. So it's a site feature we're trying to obviously incorporate into the design so it doesn't feel like an outlier, if you will, in the middle of the site. So what we're doing is, you can see it does limit our tree waste, those really dark green bands. We're not quite able to bring the double line of those trees up on the entry drive. But what we are trying to do is introduce some of the stone wall vocabulary that's consistent with the site and along Littleton Road. And then likewise with the planting, we'll show you some pictures a little bit later on, so that it does feel as though this is all really tied together. And then you still see in a lighter green, we're kind of calling it our secondary tree belt. We're really trying to give the character of the treeways. There'll be large canopy trees, they'll be defining the edge, they'll help shade the parking lot, but from a technical standpoint, from the MCMOD, they won't quite fall into that category, but what we're really trying to do is get that tree line to be consistent along the edges. So in a slightly different format, but with the same look. And here's where you start to see that with the MCMOD zoning. Work really closely. If you pan up just a little bit more, you can start to see, the pan down, I'm sorry. If you can see both of those two sections together, that's really starting to lay out how we compare to the zoning MCMOD diagrams that are in the current set. So where we're differing just a little bit is at the adjacency, as Amy described, at the base of the building. But our walks are the same, the treeways are the same. The only thing that really differs is on the number 4, and that's got a head-in parking, whereas the diagram up above is parallel. And what we're really trying to do with that head-in parking, to be honest, is it allows us to get some additional parking closer to the buildings, but also it allows us to be able to protect all of those big existing trees. You can imagine if we're starting to go parallel, we're going to lose parking counts, and in order to get to the numbers we're going to look for that somewhere else. And those are the areas right now we're able to save with this kind of a configuration, just so you guys know kind of there was a rationale to that kind of logical evolution of the plan. And then just some sections, the little blow-ups. If you go up just a little bit more, you can see the section of the plan together. Yeah, I think that's perfect. So as Amy described, we've got the stoops and at the building. Those would be elevated. We're really trying to be really sensitive to cars, car headlights, the relationship of those spaces to the streets and the parking areas. We do have the sidewalk directly to be able to get out of your car. And then we do have planting areas, and those are the kind of level of street trees that we're showing in those areas that are more of a secondary treeway. And then with the elevated stoops and really playing around with the introduction of taller plant material so that we can minimize those car headlights getting into those livable spaces. And then likewise, if that section to your right is taken just a little bit further over through the stairs that will get you from your, essentially your car space into your home. And then there is a fair amount of grade change. Yeah, exactly, there we go, that's great. This is on the back side of Building A on the 495 side. We do have some topography there, but the goal would be to have more of a deck situation on this side of the building with planting in between, and then you're seeing our wellness path, and that will vary in height as it kind of undulates with the site based on site conditions. In some cases, we'll be able to grade that out. In other conditions, we will have a small wall to be able to kind of create that, and we envision that being in the same character of the stone walls that are very consistent with the community, the neighborhood. And then this gets into some of the open space calcs. So with the existing wetland, as you guys all know, there on the left, we are well exceeding the amount of open space, overall open space on this particular site. Obviously, all those wetlands in those three locations along our edges, making those non-buildable really give us and a great amenity for the community. I think for the broader community of Westford, it keeps it green and it keeps the character along Littleton Road, but it also creates a lot of open space here for these calcs. And then when we get into this in a little deeper dive with the outdoor amenity space calcs, I can show you here in some follow-up slides, but this gets us right to where we are based on these calcs that you're showing in green. We'll meet our 20% requirements. We are looking at the possibility of those blue bands of parking that are closest to 495 to do those as green banked, which will give us some additional green space along that edge. And we are looking to obviously use those garages that you're seeing along the 495 side of Building A as some buffering as well from the interstate up there, a little more separation. And this gets into more detail on the wellness loop, which you're seeing there in orange. That's definitely the 2/3 of a mile kind of a loop that runs around the entire perimeter. As I said, the earlier plans had that directly adjacent to the park, and we've pulled that away, making that a greener and more separated element. We do have a variety of opportunities for these nodes, whether they're pause moments, seating moments. I talked about the fitness moments and some of the other pickleball, dog park, and the play along those as well. And then looking at the blue is more of a kind of internal walk. It's obviously all interconnected, but those certainly be more of a direct pathway from the parking lots into the end of the buildings and those entry points that Amy highlighted. Obviously, there's a few more on here on the backside of Building A at the north. I think we need to add a few more of those blue lines to further highlight all of those entry points that Amy showed you earlier. But we are really trying to get an easy and identifiable connection from the parking lots to people's homes. And then the other thing that's really important, as you're seeing there in purple, are certainly the crosswalks and connections to make safe circulation through there. And one other thing I should mention really strongly is obviously improving the connections from our sidewalk along Littleton to the shopping and retail that would be further page right, with the arrow in front of the potential bus stop that's out there. And these are going to be a little hard to read, so I apologize, but hopefully you have a chance to look at these within the packet that you guys have. We're really trying to I think, celebrate this site, its proximity to nature, the wetlands. We feel like there's some really amazing interpretive, educational opportunities here to help people understand the importance of wetlands. We think there are edges that can be addressed, cleaned up. Obviously, working with Concom, there are invasives out there, but certainly there could be some opportunities for a little more experience, if you will, of those wetlands. We think there are great opportunities to introduce more pollinators. There are programs out there that are really trying to help with the monarch butterfly population, and all of that is really just working with plant material, and it's in a natural, native condition. It seems like it'd be really easy to do here, and at the same time, if we could make those being educational for the residents here as well as the broader community in Westford, it seems like it would be a really easy thing to do, but it would also be a really great experience. So we talked about kind of the pickleball, the dog park, and the playgrounds. But likewise, just really looking at, stories, things we could talk about with the existing trees, the ages of those, the habitat with those. I think there's a variety of ways we can kind of tell that story. We've got opportunities for a variety of seeding and pause moments. Pollinators we talked about. There are bee and insect homes, hotels, there's signage, and birdhouses. I think there's some really great things that could be added to this. I know we'll kind of keep moving here, but I think there's some great opportunities within this to be incorporated into that walkway. And these are just some larger areas, this being in particular the parking in the upper left. We are looking at some fitness that you're seeing in picture A that is a little more multi-purpose as opposed to strictly kind of a fitness station that you might see in a park. So we don't have all of these pieces designed, picked out, but we are looking for some opportunities to make this, really interesting, playful, and flexible as a part of this wellness loop. And then likewise, whether they're swings or they're hammocks, is there some fun, what I'll call kind of a variety of seating opportunities that would be for various users or, people to experience the walkway. And you're seeing some of that more of a lounge kind of in B. So I think there's a variety of things that we'll explore as well as we go through further design and detail here. And then this would be on the wetland side of that parking lot. We are putting in a full-size pickleball court up there. We are looking at off-leash dog park, as I mentioned, and then more of a nature play as opposed to, let's say, a platform-based and really bright colors, kind of a more traditional playground that more people might experience typically. And as you get further around, likewise, there's some stuff that we can definitely do within the paving that won't impact the fire trucks and their ability to use that space to turn around. We can build on that a little bit and add some vertical elements as well, certainly outside of the maneuvering. And then as Amy showed you, we've got some connectivity on the back side of the building here off of the amenity suite. We're looking at a hammock grove to be able to kind of spill out and make this part of that amenity space as well. So there's some great ways we think we could kind of play with this and create a really interesting and inviting pedestrian environment. And then Littleton frontage, we kind of blow this up a little bit just so that we can talk in greater detail. We certainly see some opportunities at the front for some entry signage. Obviously, we'll work through that with sizes and square footages and all of that, but we see that kind of happening in that right-hand side of the entry drive. As we've mentioned, we're looking to introduce the tree belt. We feel like those trees will be able to provide a really strong, traffic calming environment for pedestrians, the ability to kind of create that space with vertical elements to pull the pedestrians back slightly off of that main road. Feels like a much safer, so obviously that's something we would want to continue to coordinate with you guys and with MassDOT, knowing that that is in the design works, but if there's an opportunity to do that, we feel like it's a good thing to at least talk about. And then likewise behind there, the stone walls that you're seeing there, a continuity of those. And then the other thing in the lower right-hand corner, thank you. We feel like there's an opportunity there. It's a bus shelter. I understand, and I don't know exactly, and I apologize. We know that the Lowell Chelmsford route, I believe it's 15, has got to stop somewhere in that area. I don't know if it's exactly there, but a little further up, closer to the retail. But we also think there's an opportunity there for a bus stop for school kids. And that was obviously something we would need to continue to coordinate with the school district and make sure that's all in the right place. And then,
Before you leave this sheet in that area, because I'm going to highlight this in my questions, you show the electric transformers being behind the bus stop here. On another one of the sheets, they're adjacent to the building.
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss that later.
Yeah, we moved them to here to screen it more. In case yeah.
This is better than, but it's not on all the sheets.
Yeah, that's probably because we realized how visible they were, so we proposed moving them here.
And I can kind of go through these quickly. We've talked a lot tonight and make sure we got plenty of time for conversation. But yeah, this will give us the character, kind of the feel we're looking for, and some of the open spaces. Talk through these. And then just a few images. So if you pan down just a little bit, it'll give us a benchmark. There you go. So perspective number 2 is really looking back towards the entry drive and the historic house, which is really the imagery you see right there. And then if you go to the, obviously, the Littleton Road right below that, the number 1. It's really more of kind of a mid-block, if you will, experience existing today. And then if we go down to the next slide, this is kind of where this is starting to evolve. So getting the street trees in there, the stone walls along these edges, starting to get some tree canopy, ornamental trees, as well as planting behind those to diminish the impact of the parking and the visibility of that along Littleton. So really trying to give some character and imagery of what that could look like in the future.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Just a couple brief things, Mr. Chair, I promise I'll be fast. This project will be in conformance with the affordable housing regulations set forth in the MICMOD, so 10% of the units overall will be affordable. They'll be evenly dispersed and in proportion to the number of bedrooms throughout the development. We're happy to and excited to meet with the Affordable Housing Trust prior to the next meeting just to discuss that a little further. One of the things Sean didn't mention, which I think is one of the best parts, is that amenity trail, is that after looking at some of the 110 master plan and Amy and Sean attending that meeting last weekend, the intention is to keep that loop that goes around the building, giving public access to that loop and some of the nodes that we show out there. I know I want to go out on those hammocks, so that's good. That's an exciting new opportunity for a public space and public amenity actually on the site. We talked briefly about the bus stop, and we've talked about that area with the fire department a couple times. We did have that, I think, shown as a crash gate initially, but the fire department did not want to have any opportunity to stop along Littleton Road, so that's why it's an electronic gate now, so they can drive directly into the site without having to stop on Littleton Road. Simultaneously with this application, we've mentioned we filed the NOI. We've also applied and started our water study with Ty and Bond with the water department, so Mr. Mahana is currently reviewing that as we speak. And with that, I think we've spoken enough. So we're happy to listen to the board's comments and questions this evening.
Great, thank you. I'd like to go by basically the general questions, and then we'll get comments from the public, and then discuss waivers as the last thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense to everybody? So my goal is that they'll have a clear idea of how we feel about the waivers before we engage the professionals and whatnot.
I'm not even sure I'm fully able to discuss all the waivers today.
Well, just to give them an idea of what we're looking at
questions.
at this point.
Yeah.
So, well, Bob, why don't you begin?
Okay, let me just start off with 3 things that I'm happy to see. One was preservation of historic building in front. Now there's 2 distinct entrances on Littleton Road, which we had asked for. And lastly, 10% of the units being affordable. With that said, I have a number of questions that probably need to go to town engineering, fire safety, for them to address. But right now, if we can bring up one of the plans that show the buildings, I'm just the layout of the site. With the 2 buildings, A and B, right there is fine. With with B, all the front side is readily accessible by fire and safety with the aerial truck. I have a lot of concerns on B, being able to get any kind of aerial access to the back of that building. The way it is now, it's so tight to the wetlands, you got the path. I don't know how they would perform a rescue unless they were using just manual ladders. And so I'm going to want to get fire and safety's input on that. I appreciate we're trying to get the trucks in and out of the site, but it doesn't do any good if the trucks can't get to the building. On building A, there's a lot of sides that are accessible, but again, the rear of the building that is closest to the wetlands does not have good accessibility for the aerial trucks. And I'd like to have their inputs of how to do that. Now, the building A, you might be able to address if you had an improved surface back there that could support the truck coming down that path. But that just concerns me. I also am a little hesitant because on both buildings, there is not good circuitous access around it. There's good access in front, but you can't go around the totality of the building because of the wetlands on A and B. So that's one of my biggest concerns. Regarding access off of 110, as I said, I'm glad to see the second access. One thing, I'm going to wait to see what happens with MassDOT as well as the traffic analysis, is I am concerned that we couldn't see an alignment of the driveway with the drive/road for 210 Littleton Road, which is right across the street. So that just, unfortunately, it never occurred when this was originally built. But looking at the site, it is possible to align and still respect the location of the historic house, but it is a dramatically different, probably layout plan and access plan for this site to do that. At a minimum, I would like to talk in the future about crosswalks there. I would like to see a crosswalk being supported as part of this project to get the residents at least across the street towards Bright Path and the 210 Littleton Road driveway. I think there is a sidewalk over there, and I can see where residents may be taking advantage of Bright Path, so I'd like to have a safe means across. That's something we saw in the charrette session 9 days ago that you referenced, so I'll just, pedestrian and crosswalks are very important. Looking at the traffic flow around these buildings, it's not clear, so we'll need to focus on this in the future. It's probably there, but I couldn't see it. How you're going to have easy move-in and move-out for residents where they can bring in a moving truck somewhere, get good access to an elevator, and be able to access the whole building and not cause a traffic jam on the roads. So similarly, want to look at package delivery. It looks like there's one package room on the first floor of Building A near the fitness center. That's going to be a daily, if not a multiple daily occurrence. So probably want to talk about how there is reserved space for delivery vehicles and how there's good access from that delivery vehicle parking area into the building and to that package room, since that's going to be a very routine occurrence. Speaking of routine occurrences, if I heard you correctly tonight, Amy, you talked about trash and recycling being handled on a daily basis. I wasn't clear.
No.
How often do you plan to pick up trash and recycling?
Depends. It can be a couple times per week or
Okay.
3 times. It varies. If it needs to be picked up more, they increase the rate.
And would like to look at the plan on this at some point where those dumpsters would be placed and looking at that from the overall traffic flow. And from a safety perspective, we did that with another project, as you know, so.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's no dumpsters that are outside the buildings permanently. They're all inside the building and they get wheeled out.
They get wheeled
Yeah,
out.
so we can show that in detail.
Would like to
Yeah.
see how that's gonna be done and where those vehicles would stop to do that pickup. Um, You mentioned MassDOT, and just one comment on that one is, I appreciate you looked at where the widening would impact your property, but as we've known from other parcels closer to the intersection, it's also the grading. I don't think you have that issue, but we do want to think about if your grading is such that it will be compatible with what MassDOT does in the future. Right now, we have one of the gas stations not too far from your property that has a very severe driveway grade because of historical changes to that road, and we do not want to see that repeated on this property if we can plan for that. You mentioned sustainability features. You mentioned the rain garden. Is it correct, there's just one rain garden, which is right in the front to the left of the main road? Is that correct?
There's one traditional rain garden, but there are planted islands throughout the site as well. But that one is
Okay, just if there are additional similar rain gardens, would like to have that on a plan at some point we could discuss. I think that's important to emphasize. The transformers, as I say, I noticed 2 different plans, because I had concern about the transformers being so close to the front corner of that building from a fire and safety perspective. I'm glad to see that if they go up, they just take a bus structure. But they were very close to the building on one of your drawings.
Yeah, this, I think, offers us the best opportunity to screen it, and we'll work on the design of the bus structure and shelter, too.
Okay, yeah, because I think you still have remnants of that pad there.
Probably, yeah, it was a late change that we were trying to get in for this meeting.
In the future, I don't think we can do this, have to do this tonight. We would also like to discuss the fertilization plans, I think. Snow removal, de-icing, especially with, in close proximity to the wetland areas. So that'll have to be part of this plan, snow removal plan. We'll have to look at snow storage areas, and how you also would limit fertilization or use natural practices so that it doesn't threaten the wetlands.
Yeah, Bob, we do a lot of that with our work along the Charles River. So, yeah, absolutely, that's something we would be happy to have that conversation continue.
Yeah. I think with that, that's summarized, one last one. And in the future, would like to discuss signage for this project and whether you're gonna need any waivers from the sign bylaw. And I'm not worried about small signs like the fitness path or that, I'm just worried about the signs you might have at the entrances, as well as, are you going to do anything with replacing the sign right now that advertises the Regency to the highway, or does that come down? So,
All right, thanks, Bob.
That's it.
Julie?
Okay, first of all, I was very happy to see the willingness to meet the affordable component and that it will be spread out, through the development and different unit sizes. Question, that's something we'll have to ask more the fire department. Although I think the loft is a great idea and I really do like them, does that in effect create like a 5th story? I don't know what the fire department thinks of that, but it's something we probably need to ask the question on. Like Bob, I was very concerned about the fire personnel, and although I know it meets the 250 feet that they have to walk, I am very concerned about them being able to perform fire safety on the back of Building B and the back of Building A. Likewise, snow storage with the wetlands, very worried about that. It's very tight, and I can't see how, where you can be able to store snow without, maybe impacting wetlands. One of my favorite school buses. I know we have the bus stop on, 110, but obviously that isn't gonna work for school children. So what's your plan for school, school buses, for, parents to be able to bring the kids, wait, especially on a morning like this, so the kids can get on the bus, need to know the plan for that.
I think the intention is to have school age, right, at that bus stop?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be a multi-use bus stop, so
Okay,
the bus
cool.
could stop there, the kids could be there if they're there. And it's also, the parents could also park over there in some of the visitor parking spaces and idle if they wanna wait there for the bus and the kids don't wanna be in the bus hut area.
Okay, so so I, again, have concerns about that whole parking area being, so visible from Littleton Road. I know that's something we had talked about before, but again, I'll defer to Dodson and Flinker on that. And on the block, the overall block issue, I think that's something we really need Dodson and Flinker to weigh in on. From the traffic perspective, one other thing too, 90-degree parking with bikes, a little bit concerned about that. I know there doesn't really appear to be bike lanes within the, within the subdivision once you get inside. So, need to be, maybe address that a little. Traffic. I did read through the whole package on the traffic analysis. And I am concerned about queuing for people getting out. From one who used to go to the Regency gym, trying to get out of that driveway at 7 a.m. is difficult. So something I know you can't put up traffic lights, but it's something you probably really need to look at, because it is not an easy, to take the left is very difficult. And that was, pre-COVID, so I can imagine what it's like now. Let's see. And in the traffic report, it talked about, 37 Powers Road, the traffic created from that. What I didn't see any reference to was the big King Street development, in Littleton, which will put a lot of traffic on 110. So I think that needs to at least be looked at in periphery. And I am concerned that the Boston Road southbound through movement it says it'll be unaffected. I would think that in the afternoon, this is PM traffic, I would think residents coming off of 495, if you try to get off 495 and go southbound on Boston Road at 5 o'clock, even if you're going to take a right turn to go to this, toward this piece of property, the congestion is awful already. So I think it's something you just, need to consider, look at, and maybe discuss a little more.
Yeah, so if you were looking at the big operations table, so it shows the southbound through as if it's its own lane, but right, you need, because the right turn lane is just a pocket lane and it's short and it fills up, you will be in that southbound. It doesn't show up in the analysis that way, but I understand what you're saying. As you're driving down the corridor, you will be delayed by the through movement until you can reach the right turn pocket.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And especially
What
at a time
exactly?
like right now where it's really limited because of the
Yes.
snow.
Yeah, because everything's squeezed in.
So those are the big things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dylan?
Yeah, so I really think you guys did a great job. You obviously heard the feedback the first time and came back with some real positive adjustments, so I commend you for that. I think my colleagues have given you a lot of feedback. I do share specifically the concern a little bit on fire safety on the backside of the buildings. I do think that's something that you are going to want to take a look at. On the whole, I don't know that this design really meets the MCMOD's intention of streets and blocks to a T. But with that being said, I really like the design, so I kind of see where you're going with it, and you're sort of like playing with the MCMOD a little bit and interpreting it in a way that I think works for the site, so I'm not totally put off by that. In addition to the comments that my colleagues have made, I love the fact you're keeping those mature trees in the back by the parking area. I'd be interested in understanding a little bit more of how you're going to preserve them through the process of putting down asphalt and actually developing the site, because trees can really suffer when that happens. So I would like some more details on how we're going to keep those great trees in place. And yeah,
Just real quickly on that, sorry.
yeah.
The islands that are there, I know you guys have probably heard enough of me tonight, but the green spaces that are at the base of those trees are identical to where they are today. So
Oh,
the
perfect.
good news is, none of that's getting narrow, we're not kind of pinching in any of that whatsoever. Those
Great.
islands, those edge of pavements are exactly where they are today. So
Awesome.
I understand your comments, and we'll be very aware of that, but just as an FYI,
Great.
kind of as we talk about that green space below them.
Fantastic.
Well, that's good for the layout, but I think tree protection during construction, like they're doing on Boston Road, is also going to have to be part of that plan.
Absolutely.
And then, I guess the only other thing that I had with regard, because you, Mr. Chair, you had asked specifically on the requested waivers. I don't think I have any specific concerns on any of the waivers in particular, like there's no showstoppers for me. I think the ones that I do want to understand a little bit better is the height of the lighting and how we're going to make sure that we don't, over flood the site with light, but still provide, adequate safety. And I am interested in sort of seeing the board's general feelings on, I understand from a practical perspective, like the jogging of the front facade not being replicated on the back. I heard you say this is to kind of maintain, it's actually easier from a heating and cooling perspective and all that. But what does that do visually, like, from the highway? And not that not that a community should necessarily identify itself by what passing motorists on 495 see, but there are some, and I won't call out certain towns, there are some really ugly facades along 495 if you drive it that are very, like, kind of industrial and disgusting looking. And, you know, I can appreciate why we wouldn't necessarily replicate what's on the front, you know, to what's on the side that faces 495, but maybe a little more detail on what that is going to look like, so we have a comfort level that it's not going to be, you know, a complete disaster, right? And I think those are my general comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just quickly, on the lighting, I think that we didn't show, we could do one of those night sky plans so you can actually see like what the light flood is. Some of these light heights are 15 feet, but near the parking locations, especially near that front parking location that's behind the historic structure, on the edges there, that's where we're trying to use a little bit of the higher lights so that we don't need so many poles in that area to light the area. So we can do a better detailed plan on the lighting. And can I just ask one question about the visual aids, because I think that they're important, and we definitely want them for the next meeting for when Dylan's here. So a rear view shed from 495 would be beneficial to the board. Is there other view sheds, like to especially help with the articulation?
Do you have a
building length?
detail of what the garages will look like? I'd like also to see that.
I think we had a thumbprint, but we can do a bigger detail so you can see what the garages are like. We can do a rear elevation rendering so you can see the rear. And then when we go back to the waivers here at the end, just if there's anything else that the board think would be helpful to review those waivers to make sure that we're meeting the standards, we can certainly prepare them for the next meeting.
I'm more concerned about the view shed from Littleton Road.
Of course,
I
Yes.
don't really have a great concern about the view shed from 495.
Well, and I'm sure the residents would like some screening from 495, so if things can be done for that.
No, I agree with that, but
Dylan, you had one more thing?
Just one more thing. It was brought up that the widening of Littleton Road could precede or follow the development of the site. If it was to follow, I guess there's an obvious question, which is how do the people who are now living there sort of traverse what's now an active construction zone while they're widening the road? So maybe a few comments in the next meeting about how, if the widening doesn't precede the development of the site, like what's the impact to residents who are now living there and now they've got, you know, a period of time where navigating Littleton Road in that area is not going to be particularly easy. What's the impact to like school-age kids trying to use that bus pickup? I mean, all of those things. It's ideally you would widen the road first, right? But I understand MassDOT works on their own schedule, so you know. And that's it. Thanks.
All right, great. Darren?
Good comments from my colleagues, but yeah, most of my concerns are around the articulation. So Attorney Robbins, like you mentioned, you know, we talked about the rear, even the front. You know, the MCMOD talks specifically about trying to limit that articulation. If we can do that somehow, especially for there's a couple of long walls. And to Dylan's point, you know, I appreciate the design of the buildings on the site. I think it generally looks pretty good, but that articulation can be, it can be pretty long. So if we can break that up somehow, and of course that would be Dodson and Flinker come back on comments on that. And I appreciate the discussion about the kind of thoroughfare between building A and B and the not having the parallel parking there. But again, just kind of being kind of scarred from some of the developments in town and trying to get by some of these, you know, people backing out and stuff. So even if we can consider putting parallel parking between the two buildings, even if it means taking some of the spaces out of the potential green spacing on the back and, you know, to you know, equal the number of spaces, I think that would be, I'd like to see if we can consider that. And I think the consultants would probably look at that too, because that was kind of a big discussion about the design with the boulevard and the parallel parking, things like that.
All right, great, everything's basically been addressed that I have. I will comment that I hope fire does sign off on this as being okay, because I would like to be one of the places that overlooks the wetlands, you know, having not a parking lot behind my house, my area, so. But obviously, safety comes first, so. With that, I will go to the audience to see if there's any questions or comments. This obviously will be the first of more than one public hearing on this matter.
Probably safer that way. There's too many cords over here.
Diane Wood, 122 Depot. I echo the traffic concerns and the traffic flow concerns. So my first question is, the way the road 110 narrows right after Cornerstone, is that part of the, do we know, is that part of the 110 re-engineering?
So from the graphic that they provided from MassDOT and Westford, there's gonna be a center lane, a turning lane added. I think Joe can add that on the, to show you.
So we can state that it's early in the design, but there is, the planned widening does go from essentially in front of, from Cornerstone and in front of the Regency all the way to Powers Road.
Okay, because right there, after we all know, right at Cornerstone, the way it, you know, goes and narrows. And specifically interested in hearing what DOT is going to say about any changes, any crosswalks, any lights. Remember, we have Bright Path right across the street, and they have 85 kids in that daycare. So I suspect at all times of the day, they're going to be kids, families and parents picking up the kids. So that kind of causes a little concern. And as Joni, you said, just getting in and out of the Regency on a good day is very challenging. So not so much just the number of cars, but the speed at which they're all traveling. So it's a combination of cars, obviously, but they fly on that road, on that stretch. So
For the short period of time that Bright Path was open and the Regency was still operating, I had made comments to Joe and Jeff that I had observed a little bit of an issue right there, was it 5:30, 6 o'clock, when there were parents trying to take a left into there, and potentially conflicting with the Regency. But it wasn't a substantial amount, but then again, the Regency was operating at that point, and I think reduced occupancy with it closing in just a month or so.
Well, just for your knowledge, we are hiring a traffic consultant.
Right.
Okay, and additionally, with Powers Road going in, there's a plan to retime the lights, and their consultant has suggested that that's going to ease, the light cycle there may ease congestion. So we'll see what our consultant says as well, but it's certainly on our radar.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. With all of the trails and facilities that are going to be within the location here, are they going to be open to the public?
Attorney Robinson said yes.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
Well, on the Bright Path driveway on the plan that we have here, it's actually east or plan right of the emergency access. So the interaction that you were seeing with Bright Path and the Regency open is the driveway that we're closing and making emergency access only. There's about 350 feet between Bright Path, which is lower right off the screen, and the driveway that we're keeping open. So it's not an offset intersection anymore. That was the existing one that would close.
Great, thank you.
I'm now confused. Can you show roughly on this print where you think that driveway is?
Joe, can you go up to the traffic section? Because we might get lucky. There's, the aerials that we were using were new
72.
enough that they had the Bright Path driveway on there, because it was from September of '25.
I think it's roughly where those two vehicles are on 110.
No, the Bright Path is further east than that.
Yeah, further right of that.
The satellite photo shows the Bright Path driveway. right
72,
across.
Joe. Page 72.
Yeah, that's the driveway we're closing. That's what I'm saying. We're leaving this driveway open
And you're having another one here.
for emergency access only.
I understand that.
Yeah, okay. So
My point is
you're
that
saying- gotcha.
it's right across from your property. It's not, as you say, it sounded like you were saying it's front of Cornerstone. It's not.
No, I thought you were saying the interaction with our main driveway, not the interaction.
No,
with
I'm
our
looking at the
emergency.
interaction between both driveways.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, you can actually see it on this plan there. It's, yeah.
yes.
So you're saying I thought you meant our main driveway, so interaction with the emergency one, that's gated, okay.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the audience? Questions, comments? All right, well then, let's briefly go take a look at waivers. Let's get the board's feel for some of these. I know we did talk about the length of the building without the articulation. So waiver is requested, well, exceeding the length of building mass without articulation. Bob, any thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are, I would prefer to see that articulation on the front side. I really don't care about the rear side of the building facing 495. But I did notice that in the area of the plan where you used to have the transformers, it looked like that was an area where you didn't have articulation, and I was guessing that might have been because of the presence of the transformers.
Yes and no, yes. We can show that to you in more detail.
But
Yeah,
that area of the
size,
building
yeah.
is the one that's most visible and closest to Littleton Road. And that's where I would like to see the articulation fenestration present.
Joni, thoughts?
Yeah, like Bob, I'm somewhat concerned about the view from 110, but I would really be interested in what Dawson Flinker thinks of this.
Dylan, think we have your thoughts?
Yeah.
Darren?
Yeah, I already expressed my concerns on those.
Yeah, I think, and again, I tend to agree the backs of the buildings are not that big of a deal. I don't think there's much of a view from Cornerstone unless you're behind, like the ambulance place, right? You're not gonna be looking at
The
it.
delivery docks.
Yeah, right, exactly. Waiver is requested for exceeding the maximum block length and permanently. Why don't we take most of these, because.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask though for the first one?
Sure.
So just for rendering, just for ideas of what the board would like to look at for the articulation. So we'll do a rear render showing the articulation, which would be the jogs and the lengths, so that the board can see where we meet it and just highlight on each building where we don't meet it so you can see and make a determination. And we can do the same thing on the front side as well, rendered front, so that we can do the same exercise. Is that what would be helpful? Okay, and then a streetscape
As I
rendering
say,
for the back.
I'd put more effort on the front, because that's.
Yes,
what
but we'll
yeah.
do both sides, so the streetscape rendering from front side, streetscape rendering from rear, okay.
Just with respect to my colleagues who clearly disagree with me about the facade from 495, which is fine, I would point out that you have walking trails around the property.
Yes.
So if you have a nice like style that's reminiscent of the farmhouse in the front, and the back looks like a brutalist architecture, that's probably a problem. So I would like to see what the back of the building
Yes.
looks like.
Well,
Okay.
I don't, yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
We agree too.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
So again, why don't we, I mean, a lot of these are basically the same, we're looking at,
Yes.
for the waivers. Is anything, nothing, tell me if something stands out to you that would be a deal breaker here.
The second one isn't a deal breaker, but I think I'm waiting to have the safety discussion on traffic flow around the site before we start thinking about maximum block length. Block length doesn't matter to me, but accessibility for fire and safety does. And that gets into how you navigate the site with the blocks. So hopefully that's clear. Off-street parking, quantity of bike parking, I'm willing to talk about parking, I mean banking it.
Right.
Because only if you run into a situation where you need more, then I'd like to see an area where you could put more.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not going to insist that it be constructed.
Yeah,
And
I
the
re-
numbers
I
are on
realized,
purpose.
yeah, I forgot to mention this, we do have 2 bike rooms in the ground floor of every building. There's about 86 spaces or so between building A and B. Depending on how we end up using the historic house, there's potential to use the barn as additional bike parking, and then we have surface bike parking around the site, so we can clarify where those locations are at the next meeting too.
How does the parking structures work? Are they going to be individual bays that are securable, or is it just going to be open and covered for?
Usually we put them inside the building, so they're inside a room, so you come in directly from the outside and the outside sidewalk, and then we have individual, it's usually a variety of different locking mechanisms inside that room, and then the room is secure too.
So a resident who has a rented car space in one of those structures could put their bike in there as well, correct?
In the garage.
In the
with
garage,
bikes in the
yeah, you
garage.
could put the bikes in the garage as well. I was talking about a separate bike room that we had in.
Yeah, no, I understand
Yeah,
that, but I'm talking about the.
But yes, the
car
garage, you could easily put your
garages
bike
too.
in there too.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Even without that, just to your point, I think the number that's required by the bylaw for this project is 225, and the number we're proposing is 102.
So can I ask, does that include the inside?
And the outside.
And the outside,
Yeah,
okay,
there's
'cause I
16
did see the
spaces
inside.
outside now, but it's
Yeah.
easy to put additional racks all over the site, and we can make sure that we can bank the bike parking so that if it's ever necessary, it'd be easy to do. Yeah, even in the carports, yes.
Joni, anything stand out here that you want to discuss, that we haven't discussed?
Not that we haven't discussed, no.
Okay. Dylan, I think we've,
I'm good. On the head-in parking from my side, I appreciate the reduction in the overall parking canopy that you're achieving through that, so I think I'm open to it. The concern I have would be people trying to use the main parking area for bike use, getting backed into by cars, right?
Yeah.
And also, if you're going to go with that design, how are you flagging for potentially like drivers going through the site to be aware that there may be people backing up, right?
Yeah.
If you're using reasonable precaution to warn drivers and perhaps, I don't know, expanding the use of the actual like trail amenity to like have to also support biking through the site so that it's like multi-use. They have that in some places out west where you can walk and bike, and they have like a designated biking area. Don't stand on the red part of the path or you will get run over by a bike. I learned that the hard way. But it's great, and then that way people can navigate the site by bike, not going through the parking areas. Like that might help a lot too.
Darren?
No, nothing else specific on this. I'm just, again, curious to see Dodson and Flinker's comments about how it relates to MBTA and where there might be some improvements there, but that's my main concern.
Any thoughts to angling the head-in spots like you did over on the other one? Instead of straight in, you have the angled parking.
So the angle parking, we can look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree that between the two buildings, that might be tough for people backing out and the trucks coming in. I mean, I think you have to do what you have to do in a lot of the area, but I know, high-traveled areas may be difficult. Other than that, unless the board has anything else, the audience doesn't have anything else.
One other comment, because it was into that during, I think, the discussion with parking. Would like to look at the Route 110 master plan concepts of using stone walls and other mechanisms to kind of block the headlights along 110, since these will be so close. I'm also respectful of the fact that that might get altered during the Route 110 widening, so we'll have to think about that. But
Yeah, I think the good news is the majority of our site, when they widen Route 110, actually pulls away and we get more space there, right? I mean, our site doesn't encroach into the site that we've already built, which is good news.
But the use of stone walls,
Yeah.
and there are examples in the 110 master plan for doing that.
Yeah.
And we have examples all the way up and down now with some of the small office buildings.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that.
That's everything.
Can I get a motion to establish a 53G account to cover the costs associated with third-party peer review related to traffic, McMod bylaw, civil engineering, stormwater management?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I don't know that it's probably even possible, but it was mentioned. We don't need to go to a sidewalk, do we? We've all kind of been there.
Been there many times.
Yeah, 100 feet of snow.
Not at this time.
Right.
But if the board would like to go out there, even outside of a site visit, we can certainly make it accessible for you to get on site. I know.
Maybe, before next meeting, if the snow clears and we want to take a walk.
Okay, that's fine, Mr. Chair.
March 16th, good to continue?
Mr. Chair, could we go to March 2nd, because I know Dodson and Flinker already started their review because they did a preliminary review, so we may actually be able to go through just Dodson and Flinker on March 2nd. I don't think the other peer reviewers would be necessarily ready yet because they haven't even looked at this application, but Dodson might be ready to give their preliminary review, and we would have time to be responsive with those renderings we discussed this evening.
Okay with staff?
Fine with us.
All right, board? Yeah. All right, so unless there's anything else,
No, that's it, Mr. Chair.
motion to continue this matter to our meeting here at 7 o'clock on the 2nd of March, up in this room.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Have some minutes.
We do have some minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of December 15th, 2025, and January 5th, 2026.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Sorry, I didn't catch the second.
Any discussion? No discussion? No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody have anything else?
One more minute, right?
Oh, he
Did it both.
He did.
Oh, it's all both. All right, still aye.
Still aye. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.